Okay, so we got some Champions Cup quarterfinal stats for you. I will say before we get into it, the Toulouse Sharks game, some of the stats are still missing from that game on the official site. Some of them I tried to reconstruct via other sources as well, but some of them I just couldn't find anywhere at all. So at times, their stats won't be available for some of these, but we got all the other games, we got all of the stats for them. Actually, some interesting stuff in there as well. So we're going to start with meters gained. So top of that is actually the Sharks with 590 meters. And then next we have Leinster 516, Toulouse 449, Stormers 423, Saracens 375, La Rochelle 325, Exeter 287, and Leicester 277. So Sharks, they made a lot of ground against Toulouse. Obviously, though, again, it's that ability to actually turn that into points on the board, which is what they kind of struggled with. But I think, for the Sharks, there was some really good defence from Toulouse, and it's just a case of just being a bit more clinical. And I think it's something that, we'll talk about a lot, I think, here, is that the South African sides kind of have to learn that at this level of competition, just being, completely clinical is what is required just to stay in the games at this level, let alone win them. So, Sharks, great performance from them. Topping there next, then, as I said, was Leinster. We already know that they love to run the ball, and then Toulouse as well. So, the top three there are teams that all kind of like to run the ball. Exeter and Leicester being at the bottom, along actually with La Rochelle, is not that surprising, because a lot of their carries are obviously from the big forwards who don't make that many meters compared to backs who are running open space, but they do have a lot of impact. And we saw that for La Rochelle and Exeter in their games as well. Next, then we have clean breaks. So top, we have Leinster and Toulouse. Next, with 11 each, Next, Sharks, Exeter and Stormers, 8 each. Saracens with 6, La Rochelle with 3, and Leicester with 2. So again, Leinster and Toulouse, two teams that really know how to cut defences open, and they showed that in their quarterfinals. Sharks again, though, finding that space against that Toulouse defence, which kind of makes that Leinster-Toulouse, semi-final very appealing, because you're thinking, well, if Sharks can find space against them, what can Leinster do? But on the flip side of that, then Leicester only making 2 clean breaks against Leinster. But I think Toulouse are too good a team to be, down that low against them. So probably going to see similar numbers for both of them, I think, in that semi-final. Exeter, a bit of surprise, really, with 8, because we kind of, think of Exeter as being a forward-dominated team that keep it tight. But, in that game, they weren't like they were the ones who were, finding space. And also, obviously, Stormers were made the same amount of clean breaks as them, but normally you would expect that from the Stormers anyway, because that is the kind of game that they play. Like they do have a decent forward pack, but I'd say they're more likely to use their backs than Exeter, but not in this particular game. Then, La Rochelle not making that many clean breaks, but again, they like to keep it tight, and the way they make the breaks really is just big guys punching holes rather than putting people through into space. Then we have defenders beaten, so it's kind of tells you a lot about that as well, because Leinster is the top with 25, La Rochelle 24, Exeter 24, Stormers 19, Leicester 14, Saracens 11, Toulouse and Sharks. No information available on for them. Like basically on the official website, it just has 0 beside their names, but also 0 for passes made, and for a few other things like what else? A couple of other things anyway, where that there's no way neither team passed 0 times in the game. So whoever was doing stats for that game, obviously made some kind of mistake, and maybe they couldn't retrieve the figures later on. But yeah, so we talked a lot about Leinster on attack, but also La Rochelle, 24 defenders beaten. So not making the clean breaks, but they're making half breaks. And a lot of that, again, is big guys carrying into contact and breaking tackles and just being hard to put down. The likes of Skelton for them, and Dante as well. Just big units running at defences and being able to get past that first or even second tackle in some cases. Next, then we have tries. So there's a bit of a try fest in a lot of the games, and kind of reflected here. You've got Leinster and Toulouse with 7, Exeter 6, Leicester and Stormers 3, La Rochelle 2, Sharks 2, and Saracens 1. So, the games where there were blowouts, no surprising really that those 3 are at the top there. La Rochelle, though, with just 2 tries, they're down below 2 of the beaten sides from the quarterfinals, but it was a very different game between themselves and Saracens, much tighter, and getting 2 tries in that game, I would say, was kind of the equivalent of a more open game getting 4 or 5. So, did really well, I think, against Saracens. They kind of kept them at that arm's length through most of the game, and only conceding 1 try as well. Just shows, what a performance they put in as well, both, in attack and in defence, in a game that, felt like on the scoreboard it was in the balance all the way through, but it felt like La Rochelle were really in control the whole way through that game. Even though Saracens had plenty of ball, it just felt like that La Rochelle defence is not giving up tries today. Next, then we have passes. So top we have Leinster 172, not really a surprise there. They look to go through the phases. Next, then Exeter with 147. Saracens 142, Sharks 127, Toulouse 116, Stormers 110, Leicester 109, and La Rochelle 106. So the Sharks and Toulouse passing numbers I got from an alternate source, so they should still be comparable, because they're generally, for this kind of stuff, there isn't that much difference between them. It's stuff like meters carried and things like that where there is a big disparity, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't put meters carried as a stat for the individual players, because they just worked out very differently. But in terms of this, so you're seeing, the teams that like to keep it tight, Leicester and La Rochelle passing out less. Stormers 110, that's below where I would have expected them to be. I would have expected them kind of be up around where the Sharks are, but again, they didn't have their best game. And then Exeter again, kind of moving the ball. It's kind of moving away from the stereotype that they're just forward dominated, and it's one out picks and that kind of stuff for them. But they actually moved the ball a fair bit in their game. Then carries. Then we have Leinster at the top again, 136. Saracens and Exeter 116. Leicester 110. Stormers 106, Sharks 99, La Rochelle 97, and Toulouse down on 92. So Toulouse, I think, looking at the carries and the passes, it's not surprising given that there's so many French internationals in the team, but they're very similar to France in that they're very efficient with their ball. And what I mean by that is, although they have less, kicks, maybe less carries, less passes, they're still making a big impact. And the same with the carries as well. Although they were carrying less, they were still making a lot of ground with those less carries. Whereas Leinster, again, we talked about, they like their phase play where they don't mind if it takes them 5 or 6 phases to find that gap that then gets them over the gain line. Toulouse, on the other hand, a lot of their carries is in that transition from defence to attack, where they can immediately exploit space and make more ground, and therefore don't have to make as many carries as Leinster. And that's another reason why I think that is going to be a fascinating matchup in that semi-final. In the other semi-final then, like, you got Exeter with 116 to La Rochelle's 97. So kind of a bit closer between those two, and two teams that for most of the time you see them, they rely on the forwards to propel them forward. And then when it's on, they go out to the backs. Again, Exeter, they went to the backs a bit more than maybe we would have expected. But I think it was a lot to do with the opposition they were playing. And against La Rochelle, I think they will revert to type and keep it a bit tighter there. Next time you have turnovers 1. So La Rochelle, Saracens and Stormers with 16 each. Exeter with 14. Toulouse 12. Leicester and Sharks 11. And Leinster down to bottom with 10. Leinster, I think they just hold on to the ball so much that they generally aren't going to be looking to turn you over because they already have the ball. La Rochelle were just, they were just so many times getting over that Saracens ball when Saracens were in their 22. But Saracens also kind of similar too, getting some really good turnovers, and the breakdown was very, very competitive between them. And with Exeter at 14, again, you've got to expect that the breakdown is going to be a big fight there. And, maybe not the deciding factor in the game, but certainly it's going to have an impact, because both teams, like, you've got Botia for La Rochelle and now for Exeter. I know he's a back, but still the guy does play kind of like a loose forward at times. But being able to get in there, not only turn the ball over, but win penalties as well, is going to kind of make that, again, an interesting contest. Toulouse and Leinster, not so much into their turnovers, but again, I think they're teams who can really exploit turnover ball, especially Toulouse. Next time you have tackles made, so Leicester with 153, not surprising there at the top, given how much Leinster like to keep hold of the ball. Next, Stormers 146, Leinster 142, Saracens 141, La Rochelle 140, Exeter 132, Toulouse 97, and Sharks 76. So the Toulouse Sharks one, the tackles they had to make, again, it feeds into the fact that Toulouse don't carry all that much, and actually Sharks didn't. Sharks are in the bottom 3 for carries as well, and therefore, there's less chances to actually perform those tackles. Leinster with 142 tackles against Leicester, though you'd normally expect Leinster to make maybe about 10 to 20% less tackles than their opposition, so they're a little bit up than where you would expect them to be, and it kind of speaks to the fact that Leicester earlier on in the game did put up to them, but just couldn't, breach the line when they had the chances. La Rochelle then and Exeter kind of, mid to bottom in that, and I think with them, the thing is that the tackles that you're going to have to make against both of those teams are going to be a lot more difficult, I think, in terms of impact, because, again, it's really big guys running at you. Talked about Skelton, but you also got the likes of Aldreet as well, carrying for La Rochelle. And having to tackle Skelton 140 times is very different than having to tackle or 130 odd times or whatever. is very different than having to tackle anyone else. Obviously, Skelton's not going to be carrying all the ball, but still, there are some other big guys. Antonio is in there as well that are going to be running at that extra pack, but Exeter have big carriers themselves too. Next, then tackle percentage. So La Rochelle at 93%. That, like, you would expect kind of a decent kind of pass rate is kind of 86 to 88 is kind of normal. Once you get into the 90s, it really is a great performance. So La Rochelle at the top there, Leinster then next with 91. Then kind of the teams that would be at the passing rate: Exeter, Saracens with 87, Leicester Stormers with 86, Toulouse then at 81, and Sharks then at 83. So for the Leinster-Toulouse semi-final, I would expect Leinster's tackle success to drop and Toulouse's to come up, and they're probably going to be fairly similar. La Rochelle and Exeter are probably going to be somewhere similar to where they were in their quarterfinals, I think. And if Exeter can get theirs up a little bit more, that might help them in what I expect to be a tight game between those two. On to lineouts then. Lineouts 1, Saracens at the top there with 15. La Rochelle next with 14, so a lot of lineouts in that game. Next then was Leinster and Exeter also with 14, Toulouse 11, Sharks 11 too, Leicester and Stormers with 8 each. So it kind of tells you like which teams have a lot of trust in their lineout, and the likes of Stormers, Leicester, Sharks. We definitely saw, and Toulouse as well. We saw their lineouts malfunctioning during the game, but also Exeter as well. And when we come on to the percentages, you'll see for them. But the top three there, all went fairly well with their lineouts. Okay, so next we have the lineout percentage. So you can see La Rochelle and Saracens there at the top with 100%. Leicester, Stormers, and Leinster 89 down to 88. So fairly decent for them. Leicester, the problem that they had was at crucial times, really, it let them down. I think Leinster coped with the fact that their lineup malfunctioned, once or twice a bit better than Leicester did overall. Then it drops a bit of a drop off down to Toulouse with 85, Sharks and Exeter then with 79 and 78 respectively. So Exeter, in that semi-final again against La Rochelle, they're, won't be as confident, I think, on their line-out ball because La Rochelle will look to disrupt them. I think Leinster and Toulouse, it's going to be fairly close. You can see it there on the stats, although you probably will see Leinster go into their line-out a bit more than Toulouse. And Toulouse, when they can, will probably look to go quickly from lineouts as well. We see Leinster do it sometimes, but I think Toulouse is kind of almost just more natural for them to look for the quick restart to the game because they love that kind of broken field running. Next time we have Mauls, so Leinster at the top there with 9, Stormers 6, Toulouse 5, La Rochelle 4, Saracens, Leicester and Sharks 3, and Exeter 2. So obviously Leinster, they love them all. It's one of their weapons that they use, and Toulouse are going to have to find a way to stop them from exploiting that, or you could see Sheen bagging a couple of tries in that semi-final. Toulouse, though, are fairly efficient with the maul themselves. They just don't tend to go to it as often as the likes of Leinster do. Exeter kind of surprised me. Generally we think of Exeter again as being forward dominated and mauling their way over for tries as well, but they just didn't do that in their quarterfinal. Maybe against La Rochelle they're going to try to do it a bit more, but I think they'll probably find that La Rochelle pack are fairly good at defending mauls as well. In terms of maul defence, maul percentage, we got La Rochelle, Saracens, Leinster, Leicester, Toulouse, and Sharks all at 100%. Stormers 75, Exeter 67. So Exeter, didn't have the best success. It is from a small um, a small sample size, though, because obviously they only won two, which means that 67% is 2 from 3. So you'd have to see them getting more chances to do it to see whether it was just one aberration or whether it's kind of a trend that we can rely on. But I think that they will probably go to the mall more against La Rochelle, but whether they're going to have success with it or not, we'll just have to see. Next, then we have Rooks 1, so no surprise, Leinster there at the top with 98. Exeter next with 95 speaks again, to the fact that they moved the ball a bit more than we expected. Leicester with 92, then La Rochelle 78, Saracens 77, Stormers 69, Sharks 58, and Toulouse 45. So Toulouse down there with 45 just kind of shows that they love to keep the ball alive, and once somebody goes to deck, the first instinct is to look for someone to offload the ball to, or to get in there and get the ball moving before a ruck can actually form. Whereas Leinster, again, are a bit more patient and don't mind having to go through those spaces before they get their chances. I think Exeter and La Rochelle, they're going to be fairly similar, I think, in their semi-final to each other. Like they're not. I think Exeter's number of rucks will come down a little bit, and La Rochelle's maybe going to stay kind of around a similar mark, but they're probably going to have an even amount of ball overall. Next, then, ruck percentage. So Sharks with 98 is an amazing performance. Next is Leinster 96, Leicester 96, Toulouse also 96, and Exeter as well. Stormers 95, La Rochelle 93, and Saracens 86. So all actually pretty high, like you would expect, kind of from, let's say, URC or even test level, that percentage would be somewhere in the mid 90s, but not as high as like where the Sharks are getting. But like, I think that Toulouse didn't really target the ball and go after it. I think they might do it a little bit more against Leinster, but Toulouse, again, similar to France, what they're very good at is they don't do what Leicester were trying to do, which is to make every ruck a contest and slow the ball in constantly. What they're very good at doing is they will target certain rucks and get guys in and slow the ball down or turn the ball over when it's on, but most of the time they will stand off. So it's going to be interesting to see whether they're able to do that early on, get in there and turn Leinster over at crucial times and maybe affect the game that way. Next, then we have Scrums 1, so Saracens at the top there with 10, Leinster and Stormers with 6, La Rochelle 5, Toulouse 4, Exeter 2, Leicester and Sharks 1 each. So the Saracens one, I think it just speaks to the fact that there were a lot of opportunities for them from the scrum, because La Rochelle carrying the ball, there were a fair few mistakes from them, but Saracens really didn't use that platform all that good. Like the scrum was actually a fairly good contest in that game, and yeah, they never really got that many strike moves off their scrums. For the others, like, it was all fairly close. Like Exeter with only 2. You'd expect them against La Rochelle, again, that number is going to increase. In terms of scrum percentage then, Leinster with 100%, Saracens 91, La Rochelle 83, Toulouse 80, Stormers 75, Exeter 67, Sharks 50, and Leicester down with 33. So Leicester, very, kind of their IP is that, they're very good in the forwards and at the set piece, but against Leinster, like their scrum struggled at times. We kind of like teams often will target the Leinster scrum, and sometimes they'll have joy, but other times they'll find like that this Leinster scrum is actually a decent unit as well. I think Toulouse and Leinster again is going to be fairly close between those two, because Toulouse again they have that nous of knowing which scrums that they're going to target, and they can catch Leinster on hop. I think La Rochelle and Exeter, La Rochelle will be looking to get the edge in that battle. I think if Exeter can kind of get parity, maybe again they're going to be able to keep the game fairly close. Next then we have kicks, so Leicester, Stormers and Toulouse all kicking the most of 27. Exeter, Sharks 26 each, Leinster 20, La Rochelle 19 and Saracens 15. So there, one thing to draw your attention to is like we kind of think of the likes of Saracens and La Rochelle as being somewhat kicking teams, and Toulouse as being a running team. We can see there that Toulouse actually do kick a lot, and they make a hell of a distance with it as well. If we look at kick meters, like Toulouse with 1,061, Sharks next with 809, so a full 250 meters more between first and second. Next, Exeter 759, Stormers 611, Leicester 561, 562, Leinster 561, La Rochelle 452, and Saracens 383. So, Toulouse, like kicking is actually a major way of how they get themselves in position. And then it's just the madcap stuff that we remember from their backs. But a lot of their bread and butter is actually, really good kicks. And it's that ability to spot the space to kick into as well. It's not just a case of just putting, boot to ball and kicking it as hard and as far as you can. For them, it's more about identifying the space and moving that back line around through a series of kicks in order to create the space that they want. And I think they're really good at that. Next time we have penalties conceded. Saracens at the top there were 18, La Rochelle 14, Leicester 13, Toulouse 11, Leinster 10, Stormers also 10, Exeter 7, and Sharks 6. So I think that Toulouse, Leinster, whichever team can kind of keep close to that number, or maybe even dip under 10, it's going to give them a bit of an advantage, I think, in terms of field position. Exeter, if they can repeat their really good discipline that they had in their game, then again, that's another way for them, I think, to get themselves into a game that a lot of people are probably expecting La Rochelle to win. Next, then, we're going to look at some player stats. So, in terms of carries, we got Kieran Bosch and Damien Willemse at the top there with 18 each. Two players who love to take the ball to the line. Next then is Gregory Aldred, Gary Ringrose and Anton Dupont with 15 each. Especially Ringrose and Dupont, real running threats. Aldred, just a really tough carrier of the ball. Then we have Ben Earl, Mike Brown, John Gray and Jasper Wiese from 14 down to 12 there. Just off there, then we have Jack Conan and Manny Lebock with 11 each as well. But yeah, Bosch, I thought, was outstanding for the Sharks in terms of his offensive work, at least.
In terms of defense, maybe not so good. Next, then we have tackles. So we have Marvin Ori with 18 there, put in a real shift for the Stormers in a losing team. Ben Earl and Maro Itoji, 17 and 16 respectively. Again, it's often when teams lose, it's not because of lack of effort on the part of the players. It's just that things aren't clicking for them and going their way. You can see that Saracens really were working hard in that game, similar to Leicester as well. We got Cameron Henderson 15, Jasper Visa with 14. Then Exeter, Daffy Jenkins 14, Tommy Reffel, another Leicester player, 14. Franz Malherbe with 14 for Stormers as well. Then we have Johnny Gray 13. Got just below there then Ollie Woodburn with 13, James Ryan, Caelan Doris, Stephen Kitsoff and Jamie George with 13 each as well. But yeah, Ori, what a shift from him for the Stormers. Next time we have missed tackles. So we've got Mako Vunapola, Dan Kelly and Curran Bosch with 5 each. So already talked about Bosch's defensive frailties. Mako Vunapola, another one there, like he's a big guy, but he often gets targeted for basic people just going through the gap. They generally don't run over him, but they can kind of step around him, or just his position sometimes can be a little bit off. Then we have Marvin Ori with 4 missed tackles there as well. So obviously he made the most attempted tackles at the weekend with 18 successful and 4 missed. Joe Simmons, Alex Lazowski and Oxen Che with 4 each as well, with George Martin and Jack Van Portby 3 each. And just off the chart we have Francois Kroos, BJ Dixon, Marco Riccioni, Juan Cruz Malia and Thibaut Flamand, all with 3 each. Then turnovers 1, Lavani Bottia 4. What a shift for him, for La Rochelle. Like, the guy was just a turnover machine, and it really was great to see the number of times that he was able to get in there, and at very crucial moments as well, turn that ball over for La Rochelle. Then Tommy Reffel with 3 for Leicester, really trying to make an impact on the game, and he was one of their better players in a losing effort against Leinster. We talked as well about Jack Noel there with 3, how he kind of plays a bit like a loose forward at times, even though he is a right winger. Johan Tanga there with 3. He actually came on for Bottia, so continued the good work there. He also come on from Gregory Aldred, who's there with 2. We've also got Joe Simmons, Maro Toji, Stephen Kitsoff, and Emmanuel Maufu with 2 each as well. So, you can see from that there, that game between La Rochelle and Exeter, you got players who love to get over the ball and love to turn it over for the team as well. So again, I think that breakdown area is going to be very competitive between those two. Next time we have offloads, so we have Daniel Duplessis there with 5, then Joe Simmons and Owen Farrell next with 3 each. Owen Farrell, he gets a lot of stick, but we've seen it with England and with Saracens. The guy actually offloads the ball a lot. He may not be in terms of footwork and stuff like that, as splash as of Marcus Smith, but he does know how to move the ball and offloads when he thinks it's on as well. We also have Gary Ringrose there with 2, Cibolo Sinatla with 2, Jimmy O'Brien with 2, Nick Tompkins, Hugo Keenan, Suleiman Hartzenberg, and then just off there as well, Jack Conan, James Lowe, all with 2 each as well. So, the Leinster offloads, we've got 5 players with 2 offloads each. I think that's a big difference between Leinster and Ireland, because people always say, Leinster are just Ireland that play in blue. Obviously, some of the personnel are different, but also the way that they play the game is different. Leinster, have a bit more license, I think, to go for the offload. And I think part of it is because the Ireland attacking system is still in its infancy. I know we've seen it develop over the last year or so, but it still has more development to go. Whereas Leinster's, I think, has, I wouldn't say it's reached a peak, but it's at a level where the players are more comfortable, even though it's the same personnel, that in that system, they're more comfortable with offloading the ball. They know that somebody is going to be there either to pick it off the deck or to get it into their hands and maybe go through a gap and break. The last thing then in terms of breaks, also we have clean breaks. So Jimmy O'Brien there on the top with 5, Daniel Phillips at 4, Gary Ringrose 3, Hartzenberg 3, Woodburn 3 as well. There we have Noel, Malins, Potter and Kerr-Barler with 2 each. So that midfield combination, O'Brien was playing the midfield, right? Jimmy O'Brien and Gary Ringrose making 8 clean breaks between them. I know Leicester's defence has something to do with that, but if they can get anywhere near those numbers against Toulouse, again, it could be a factor in swinging the game in Leinster's favour. Next, then, we're going to have a look at some charts in terms of how teams are using their possession. So we got La Rochelle there, Saracens, Leinster, and Leicester. So I'm just going to put these up so you can pause the video if you want to have a look at those individually. Maybe if you're watching on a smaller screen, because the last slide I'm going to talk about has all 8 teams on it, so it's easier for comparison, but I know that it can be small on a smaller screen, so I've done these ones so you can see. Then the next one we have Toulouse, Sharks, Exeter and Stormers there as well. So now we'll go on to the one that has them all on there. So first of all, just comparing some of the teams as well, I had to go back and check that I hadn't made mistakes, with where information being pulled from, but you can see with Saracens and Leinster basically have exactly the same distribution as each other, but with very different results for them. And then also it's the Sharks and Exeter, again, same distribution, but very different results in terms of how the games worked out for them. But in terms of overall, then you see that the Stormers and Leicester are the teams who kick most of their ball. Next, then we have Toulouse, who are don't kick as much, but we saw from the amount of meters that they make that it still is a very important part of their attack. And then the teams that kick the least, like you've got Leinster and Saracens down there at 6% each. So, they don't kick the ball as often. From Leinster, we often see, maybe from Gibson Park, up and unders, and sometimes we see kick returns from the back 3 as well, especially Keenan or Lowe when they think it's on. But generally, they will try to run the ball back rather than kick it back. In terms of passes, then you can see that like Leinster love a pass, like we talked about, they love to go through their phase play, and Saracens kind of similar, but again not as good results as Leinster got. And then in terms of the teams that don't pass as much, like you got Leicester there at the bottom, and then Stormers there with 45 as well. Like Stormers, generally you expect the Stormers to pass more of the ball than we saw them do against Exeter. But again, I think Exeter's performance kind of stymied them in that regard. In terms of carries, then we're seeing Leicester there with 45 at the top, but then Stormers and La Rochelle with 44 each. La Rochelle they do love getting those big men on the ball and carrying as much as they can. At the bottom then we have Toulouse, Exeter and Sharks all on 40%. So again, Toulouse are just an efficient team, and I think they don't need to carry as much as other teams because they get so much out of the kicking game that they don't need to make as many meters, and they don't need to go through as many phases, I think, compared to other teams who actually create chances and create their scores. So they're still going to be very dangerous against Leinster. But yeah, if you want, like, it's up there. You can have a look at it yourself and go in, dig in a bit more if you want. But that is the end of this one. It's fairly long, but hopefully it was enjoyable for you. I will be doing kind of something similar for, I think, the URC. It's going to take a long time, though, to put all those stats together because the URC, in their wisdom, have decided that they're going to use their stupid top 100 thing that doesn't really give you any meaningful stats. It's almost like a video game type thing where, this guy is rated 99, but what does that mean? But they do give individual stats hidden, not hidden, but they're very hard to find on their website, but they all need to be collated together. So I'll do that for the regular season, and we'll have that for the end of that. I'm also going to have, coming this weekend, we have more URC stuff, so we're going to have previews and reviews of those, and Women's Six Nations, again, previews and reviews of the games, and we'll have stats for Women's Six Nations coming in the follow week as well, where we look at the first 3 rounds together. So look out for those, and hopefully see you guys on another video. If you wouldn't mind maybe hitting the like button, posting a comment, and sharing this video, because it hugely helps the channel when people do that. The amount of people who actually see the videos kind of skyrockets when people actually engage with them. So hopefully this was interesting enough for you to do that, and see you guys on the next video.